What's going on, everybody? Mortem here, this time bringing you how my 2025 predictions panned out for various video games, which may seem a little amorphous, but it is actually slightly more formal than that, because you see, the video I like to put out on January 1st the past few years, I think I started doing this in like 2022, somewhere around there, give or take, is basically to make a bunch of predictions about things that might happen in the gaming industry, how some stuff might ultimately work out, and then at the end of the year, this video, actually talk about that and discuss it and either laugh at how hilariously wrong it was or, bask in the gift of prophecy Apollo thought to send my way. Now, this is a bit of an interesting year generally, though, because I got a lot of these so incredibly close to right, but not quite all the way there. I think there's a few that I think could safely be considered half credit here. One was entirely wrong, one was right on the money, and the other three, you'll obviously see when we get into them, they were extremely close. But ultimately, you don't just have to take my word for this. I will link the original video where I made the predictions down below, so you can go back and watch that and kind of get an idea of exactly where my head was with these, if that's something you are interested in. But otherwise, we're going to go ahead and get off to the races here, starting with things like layoffs and the voice actor strike and stuff that was all going on earlier, both last year and still ongoing in part, and that's kind of why I'm giving this one a half credit. So basically the prediction here was that the layoffs as well as some of the strikes and stuff that were hitting the video games industry would resolve themselves and get all ironed out. Now, what I'm referring to a little more specifically is the layoffs that, pretty much everybody was going through last year especially, but that's definitely still spilled over a bit, and where I don't think got it exactly right by any means, but it has certainly slowed down. But the other part of it was actually the voice actors strike. So there was the big SAG-AFTRA strike, which included voice acting and stuff in video games, and that ultimately actually reached a temporary agreement last I heard back in June or July. Haven't heard any more since, don't know what the status of it is right this moment. But long story short, the worst of it seems to have passed, but it is hardly all gone, and so I'm giving myself half credit on this one, though to be clear, much more concerned about those people's livelihoods at the end of the day, and I'm glad they're able to get back to work and get paid to do what hopefully they enjoy in a way that is more beneficial to them. Coming up next, we got another one that is sort of half right, I would guess, and this is about the Oblivion remaster and Skyblivion. So if you guys throw your minds back to the beginning of 2025, Oblivion Remastered was not a given. There was a lot of speculation about whether or not that was happening, and then ultimately we got that shadow drop announcement type deal. And boom, there it is, all crazy. It was a great time, loved it personally. However, at the beginning of the year, there was some concern that this was going to push up against the release of Skyblivion as well. Now, at the time, Skyblivion was slated for 2025, but has since been pushed into 2026. But my prediction at the time is that these games would potentially release and there just wouldn't be as much of a problem as people were thinking between the two, because I felt like there just wasn't that much overlap necessarily between the audiences for each. Because while I love Oblivion and I'm willing to play every different version of it you can throw at me, I don't think that's the case for most people. As popular as mods are for Bethesda games, the vast majority of people still aren't messing around with them at all. But however you want to think about it, it's kind of a moot point because ultimately Skyblivion got pushed and there was obviously no real conflict between the two. So on one hand, I guess I was right in the sense that there wasn't an issue, but I was wrong about it actually releasing. So again, giving myself half credit on this one. Feel however you want about it. I know in my heart of hearts that I deserve a half a point. Alright, now this third one is especially funny because I think people might call foul on it immediately, but I made a prediction that we would learn about what Owlcat's next game was, and we know that now to be Dark Heresy. At the beginning of the year, this is not something I knew. We learned about it kind of towards the end of May that they were going to be announcing something when they sent me and some other creators this odd little puzzle lockbox thing that led to some clues about what their next game would be about, or in particular that it would involve the Night Lords to be more specific. I might link that video too, that was a fun one. But either way, I promise I didn't know about any of that ahead of time. I just really enjoy Owlcat's work, and I do cover basically everything. They do not, in fact, inform me of everything they've got in the pipeline. At most, I'll usually know about stuff before you guys do, maybe a couple weeks in advance at best. So when I made that predictions video all the way at January 1st of the year, I had no idea. I had just actually kind of done the math on their general release cadence and was like, they're probably going to announce something in 2025 at the very least. But not only did they announce it, we've actually got the playable alpha here very recently. recently, which I've already made a video on and everything. So not only was it announced, I did get to play it. So ultimately was kind of right on the money on this one. And then for number 4, again, this is another one where it really depends on how you want to count it. So my 4th prediction was that we would find out what Obsidian was working on next. Now, at the beginning of the year, again, if you throw your mind back in January 1st, we knew that Obsidian was launching Avowed and The Outer Worlds 2 in 2025. It came out later that they were actually also going to be working on Grounded 2, which released into like early access, which I believe is where it still is. If that saw a full release, then I have been hilariously behind the ball. But technically speaking, I suppose you could count Grounded 2 as qualifying for this, but I admittedly don't think it was quite in the spirit of what I meant with my prediction, because my prediction was that Obsidian has gotten really used to working on multiple games at the same time, and thanks to a video from Tim Kane talking about how he's working full-time at Obsidian again, we already know that they're working on another project unannounced officially just from that. So again, I guess depending on how you want to slice this one, I feel like I was correct, but I also don't feel good about this one, so I'm calling it half credit. Which brings us to our final entry, which I just straight up got wrong for like the official purposes. I personally obviously agreed with it, but for the big Game of the Year prediction, probably the easiest prediction to actually throw out there at the beginning of the year, I put down Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 would likely fill that role. And for me, it did. Kingdom Come Deliverance 2 was in fact my Game of the Year personally, but that's ultimately not what the prediction actually was. My prediction was for the official Game of the Year from the Game Awards specifically, and that ultimately went to Expedition 33, which is a great game in its own right. I have noticed there's been like a weird mudslinging competition over this game winning Game of the Year, but I've played both of them. They're both great games. I just liked KCD2 more personally. And so, officially speaking, we've got to call it a no. I ultimately did not predict that one correctly, and thus, here we are. So, honestly, pretty good year for predictions overall. I feel like I got most of them extremely close. It's been a fun year for gaming overall. I had a blast playing through these games and seeing how things would pan out. So, all of that said, I'd love to know how things worked out for you, if you made any interesting predictions or things didn't play out quite the way you expected, or anything that happened unexpectedly, I guess. I'd say the thing that caught me off guard the most was probably the announcement of Divinity by Larian, which is funny because I'd actually made videos talking about how exactly what they're doing is what I hoped they were doing. Those videos exist, you can go look at them. I guess I just didn't want to put that into official words and jinx it in my own mind, I guess, but either way, that was an unexpected thing that got me. Either way though, hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, by all means, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube jazz, but regardless of any of that, truly, just thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. May you wander in wisdom and have an amazing day.